All right, you guys, we're back with Dr. Rand with Ask the Doc a little bit earlier today.
Have you had your espressos?
I
Plural?
did, yeah.
Good.
All right, we're going to get started.
All right, so the first question is I was diagnosed with hereditary hemochromatosis, and I have difficulty building muscle even with diet and exercise. Do you know why that is, Doc? Kim B. Well, first of all, hemochromatosis is a condition in which your body will store more iron in the cells and to an excessive amount, and it actually hinders the function of the cell. And there are different levels of it in the sense that some people have this hemochromatosis and don't have any side effects from it necessarily, wouldn't know it unless labs were taken, certain labs. Now others, though, can definitely have significant side effects from it. And obviously, if it's affecting the function of the cell, you can imagine that it would definitely affect your muscle building ability and function. Fatigue is usually a sign of, I should say, an initial sign or a common one with hemochromatosis where there is symptoms, where there are symptoms. But yeah, because of that dysfunction, it's harder to put on muscle no matter what you do. I mean, proper diet and exercise and rest, of course, is important no matter what. But if you have this, then the common way to treat it is to use therapeutic phlebotomies, which is a fancy way of saying to go give blood, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to get rid of the red blood cells, which contain that hemoglobin, the iron. And what I've seen in my practice a few times now is people that have it and are complaining about, actually we picked up on it more often than not when someone goes on TRT, and again, it's not because of the testosterone itself, but testosterone will leverage the production of these red blood cells and the hemoglobin thereupon. And, either we'll catch it or the primary care will catch it, and they'll say, oh, it's that doggone testosterone, don't take so much. And in fact, that's probably the worst thing to do, because if someone treats hemochromatosis, needs to treat it and wants to treat it, whatever, with therapeutic phlebotomies, the problem can be anemia, which can also lead to fatigue and the symptoms you're trying to avoid, in other words. And if you use testosterone, therefore, thereby you can keep your levels of red blood cells and hemoglobin up higher while still using the therapeutic phlebotomies to control iron. Think about it this way. The iron that you consume is being used to make hemoglobin in these red blood cells, but it's also being used to oversupply the cell, we'll say. So by getting rid of that iron through therapeutic phlebotomies, you're dumping the iron. So if you restrict your diet, which is another way, of course, of treating it, in ways that limit your consumption of iron, and sometimes that includes other limitations. For example, the use of vitamin C will help with iron absorption. So unfortunately, one method is to tamp down on your vitamin C consumption as well as your iron consumption. But you can see if you do this regularly, you can get ahead of the game a bit by getting rid of iron, not replacing it, and finding that sweet spot where you still don't become anemic. You're making more red blood cells, so you can stay healthy, not anemic, but you're clearing out thereby, by the typical method used anyway, the excess iron. Which is, again, it's hereditary typically, although I think there are other reasons why you can get it, but most of it's hereditary. And, you can pick it up with cellular staining, I believe. But anyway, sorry, the question is, do you know why that is? Well, I hope I gave you a decent explanation anyway.
Yeah.
But how to combat it, I think, is more appropriate, right? I mean,
Yes.
So stick with the stuff that always worked, but in short, pare down on the iron consumption, maybe even the vitamin C consumption, and consider therapeutic phlebotomies. And if appropriate, Kim doesn't say how old she is, but actually utilize testosterone to build up your red blood cells while you're doing it.
Awesome. Thanks, Doc.
Sure. So next question says, hey, Doc, how many steroids are not legally available in the U.S.? Can you mention which ones are legal? John K. Probably easier to answer the question by saying how many are legal, not not legal because there's a boatload of them. I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we have. Well, and it kind of as a practical matter, there are some that are legal that are either not available or not worth using. But to answer the question as best I can without digging into the research, which is I'm sure freely available. I mean, we could dig it up probably on camera here, but the ones that practically are available, useful, are stanozolol, which a lot of people know as Winstrol, oxandrolone, most people know as Anavar, and then from there, nandrolone, which people know as typically decadrobolin, although what is called NPP is another form of decadrobolin, I think also called dorobolin, is also legal. But again, I was ticking off the practically useful ones because try finding that. Another one that I used to think wasn't even legal, but apparently is legal, and I forgot how I found that out recently, but Proviron. A lot of bodybuilders like to use Proviron.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's not legal here. Well, actually it is.
Wow.
It's just not available. Try and find it.
Yeah.
Another one that's not an anabolic steroid, but a steroid is testosterone in the undecanoate form. I was waiting, and others were waiting for this to become available in the United States. FDA approval was what we were waiting for I want to say at least a decade. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I'm terrible with time, but okay, it's officially accepted by the FDA, but try and find it. I had one guy fly from Texas to get a prescription for it and to ask me to help him find it. You can't get it. I mean,
Wow.
maybe it's different, but I gave up probably 2 years ago trying to locate it because people wanted it. But the idea being with undecanoate, injectable undecanoate, you don't have to inject as frequently.
Oh.
Really, one of the main purposes, at least originally, behind using a esterified form of testosterone, fewer injections.
Yeah.
And yet you can still, because of its slow release, keep the tighter testosterone up. So, okay, another one that is available and legal here is what people refer to as Anadrol.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. One that surprises me to this day is halotestin.
Oh, yeah.
That is legal, but
What is that used for?
I
Medically.
have to say, I don't even know. It's such a, to me, in the medical practice, useless drug. And also I would think for most, whatever you want to call it, users outside the medical community, what in the heck would you want to use it for? It's notably harsher on your liver than are most. And typically the harshness comes down to, like with methylated test originally, the idea is to keep it in the system longer. So it makes it harder when you methylate it, or this form of an anabolic steroid, halotestin, harder for the liver to break it down, which makes the liver work harder, right? So it taxes the liver, right? The halotestin comes with such crazy side effects typically. I always say, anabolic steroids don't typically create the roid rage that people give it credit for. It's usually the excess estrogen formed from some of these steroids or from other products that aren't controlled properly. But halotestin is one of those exceptions to the rule. Like trenbolone, okay, which is one that is not available freely in the United States. In other words, not legal here for humans. But boy, most people have horrendous side effects.
Yeah.
Night sweats that can literally, you soak in your sheets.
Yeah.
And aggression, okay.
Yeah.
Atypical, in my opinion, to what the other ones engender in terms of side effects. But so those are legal, but really for all intents and purposes, and then the rest I would say are illegal.
Yeah.
Although there's one more I didn't mention.
What about Primo?
Well, primobolan is not illegal in the United States, but it's kind of what I call a close cousin to oxandrolone and stanozolol.
I thought it was for some reason.
Well, I wish it were, simply because I would say it's closer to oxandrolone, Anavar, what people used to call Anavar. It doesn't come with the effect on what we call angioedema, the excess water that Winstrol or stanozolol has attached to it. So I would argue it's a little safer for people who are older and are already sort of desiccating naturally with age. But Primobolan, because it's injectable, it just makes life so much more easy than with 2-3 times a day tablets of either oxandrolone or stanozolol. So I wish that were available. And with a great safety profile it has, I mean, similar to
mild,
Anavar.
right? On side effects.
Doesn't have androgenic side effects, milder than testosterone use itself. So that's one that should be what is on the wish list in the United States. I wish it were approved.
Your fingers.
But the other one I was going to mention is danazol. Danazol is a weird one because I would argue it shouldn't be considered an anabolic steroid. I mean, you could argue that about Proviron because it's so androgenic and very not very anabolic at all. So why call it an anabolic steroid? And for example, Proviron is used typically for prepubertal males that have gone kind of past the time in which they should have experienced puberty to engender puberty, initiate it. So or what comes with it. And you asked me earlier what halotestin is for. I can only speculate without looking it up. It's probably something like anemia, like Anadrol is. That's its primary indication, we call it. But obviously it can be used, quote unquote, off-label. For example, Anadrol is great for, I say great, I could probably name on one hand how many times I prescribed it because there are other options that are, I would argue, better for many reasons.
Yeah.
Safety, lack of a side effect profile, but Anadrol is great for cachexia, wasting disorders, when people just, HIV particularly, and others where you just can't keep the muscle on the frame, and can literally be life-saving. But its indication is, again, anemia, which is kind of weird because there's so many, arguably much better ways to treat anemia than with Anadrol, really. So it's and I'm getting way off topic here. I realize the question was a simple one.
This is all good, yeah.
But I think those are the ones just off the top of my head. I think that's probably a good list that are legal, and the rest of them you can consider not legal.
Yeah.
So the Dianabols of old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still quite a few.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Doc.
All right. So this next question is which drug, compound, or peptide is the very best to burn body fat? Alex V. Okay, that one's kind of is a loaded question because body fat, the dissipation, burning calories or burning body fat. Well, first of all, they're two different things. I mean, you can burn calories without necessarily burning body fat, That's true. It comes down to, for example, the form of exercise, your eating patterns, even your sleep comes into this, as we've said many times. So which one, you could argue, depends upon the individual clearly, almost always the case, if not always, and what other activities that individual is engaged in, again, including diet, exercise, and sleep. Excuse me, work would be another consideration. If someone's working on a high-tension power line versus at a desk. So, yeah, not an easy question to answer. What are some of those, though, and I think this is probably what Alex is getting at, that might be employed depending upon the individual and the circumstances? The drug that's not necessarily for burning body fat, but useful in reducing body weight. And despite some of the initial purported observations and accusations, the semaglutides or the tirzepatide, all the GLP-1 antagonists, those can be very effective and with very few side effects, despite what you might read, attached to them at losing body fat. And again, depending upon what you do with those, can be very effective. So that is a drug, actually a peptide, both, that can be used to help, quote unquote, burn body fat. There are other peptides that, depending upon how you use them, and again, your circumstances can be an assist. There's a fragment of the growth hormone molecule that's considered a peptide that helps with fat loss, which is one of the potential benefits to using growth hormone itself, but without obviously the other growth hormone effects. So you've got this, a peptide is a long line of these amino acids And there's a lot of crossover between what we officially call a peptide versus a protein, which is what peptides, you got amino acids lined up that become peptides, and peptides lined up to become proteins. But bottom line is it's a fraction of these amino acids lined up that are part of an entire molecule of growth hormone that hits the cell, attaches to the cell in such a way that it helps effectuate fat loss. Peptides, drugs, other compounds. So there are much more things, many more things available in the supplement side of things, because you have things like L-carnitine, which can be ingested or injected, which helps free up fat and make it available for use, preferentially over muscle glycogen. Again, depending upon the exercise. If you're going to the gym and doing 3s and 5 pulls off the floor, probably not going to be as efficacious as if you're riding your bike for 2-3 hours, right? So I hope people are following where I'm going with this. And then you've got a great combination. I say great combination when I say that, it's going to sound like this, but way back in the old days, I put together a compound that we now call lipo-C, and that includes what we used to call lipo-B, essentially, and just adding L-carnitine and some B vitamins, but methionine, inositol, and choline, which we can do orally as MIC caps for short, which helps clean the fat out of the liver. But when you inject it, it helps systemic loss of body fat. So that whole combination of what we consider over-the-counter supplements can be helpful for fat loss. And this is kind of off topic, but for localized fat loss, we've got PCDC, phosphatidylcholine deoxycholate, which was termed lipodissolve. And it was originally invented for dissolving plaque in the arteries by injection, and either really actually localized, through a catheter or IV. But then we used it, and it is very effective for local fat loss. To be used in inject. I mean, you can with a typical dose of it usually is about I want to say 2,500 milligrams. I'm going to get this wrong, but anyway, you can. The dose will allow you to cover about the size of a large dinner plate.
Wow! And
if you divide that in half, you say, "Well, I don't have an area like that, but I can use half a plate on my thighs, either side." You probably get rid of about 40% of the body fat. You're actually killing fat cells that way.
That's still around?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to come by. I have it compounded. It's kind of fallen out of favor. You know how fads are.
Yeah,
I used it a lot early in my practice, and it works well.
Wow.
But that's another one. And then there was another topical. Again, it's going to sound like this, but I actually gleaned it from a UCLA study. A friend of mine, he won't mind my saying, Joe Tong. You know Joe. Yeah, of course you know Joe. Had asked me if there were a topical. And remember back in the day, guys were using, what was it, Thiamosol? What was
DMSO, no?
No, it was, it's like it's a cream they use, I think, for hemorrhoids, right?
Oh.
And they used to put it topically to help tighten the skin, and they thought it got rid of water underneath.
Yeah, what was it called?
I don't remember the name, but
it was
a lot of people are going, yeah, I know.
It was a French product.
Well, and they had different versions of it, yeah, but something better than that. And so,
Thiamicase.
Something like that, right?
Thiamicase.
But on a Saturday morning, I spent the morning, because I love this sort of thing, and I just dug into the research and found some good studies that used yohimbine, aminophylline, and I think I threw in there, it wouldn't have been L-carnitine. I can't remember what the formula was, but it actually worked really well. And the way I know that is because, the study, it was a small study, but it was done well. They put it on one side and not the other, and it worked, considerably well on the side that it was applied. And actually, I shouldn't say it was this concoction. It was based on different studies, and I combined them all together. Anyway, the bodybuilding community, as you know, is a great testing ground because
they'll try anything.
But there's no mercy either. There's no, maybe. I mean, it either works or it doesn't. It's like, Olympic lifting. You either put that bar over your head or you don't, man. And it got a lot of rave reviews. It's just, it was a little pricey because we were having it compounded. And then I had a decision to make, do I want to become a manufacturer of this product? It was taken off or don't want to become or stay a doctor. And I, stayed a doctor, but thank goodness. Now I even forgot the question, but things to help you with fat loss. These are, by the way, things that in a game of inches, literally and figuratively, are going to assist in the process. But you still got to do the work, of course. I have to say that, and that person probably knows that that's the truth. But
there's no magic pill. We know.
Yeah, no. But there's tricks you can use, and then things that you find work better for you than others. One of the things I love to use is injected L-carnitine.
Yeah.
Simply because you can get roughly 10 times the amount your system than you would if you were ingesting it, right? So you can really dose up well, and I've tried it and seen wonderful results since I was relatively young. I think when I was in my late 20s. It was one of the few times I've used something where I was like, whoa, this is making such a difference. And I'm a doubting Thomas. I'm like, yeah, this stuff doesn't work. Let me try it. I'm like, whoa. And I racked something that, we're doing a lot of reps, but I got almost more than double the reps that I would normally get.
Wow.
Now, some of that has to be attributable to just having a good day and all that kind of stuff. But still, that's way more. I mean, okay, I got 3 more reps. Maybe it worked, but double.
Yeah.
I think I stopped at like rep 36 with leg press. Wow. And I was like, okay, this is just kind of weird. It's weird. I know you're like, why would you stop? Well, I did. I don't know. It's like, well, this can't be happening. And now, of course, that's just anecdotal, but there are plenty of reports that you can look into, studies. Michael Colgan, I have to mention him, the PhD. He was the one that wrote a book about nutrition that alerted me to the benefits of L-carnitine, and so you can track the studies. One more, beta-alanine, which doesn't work directly at reducing fat, but again, just to make my point about it, it's not necessarily circular, but it's multifaceted, and you might come at it from an indirect angle, and it still could be very efficacious. But it breaks down into histidine and carnosine, not carnitine, but carnosine, S in Sierra. And that can allow you to exercise for a longer amount of time. For a bodybuilder, let's say, that might amount to a couple more reps when you're hitting your the end of the set in high intensity work. Especially when you use with creatine. And sorry, I'm confounding the issue here, but creatine definitely, no matter what, I would argue, gives you another couple of reps, 3 to 5 seconds, we'll say. And combine that with beta-alanine, which buffers the acid created when you go anaerobic for another 3 to 5 seconds. Miraculous, because A, you don't damage the cell because that acid's been buffered as much as you would normally, and you get the arguably increased effort because, let's face it, doesn't hurt as much because you're not feeling the burn,
right? But
you're burning through the energy nevertheless and getting those extra reps. So arguably that's a indirect way, because you're going to presumably, doing everything else correctly, build more muscle and therefore literally burn calories while you're sleeping at night with that extra muscle on your frame. And plus whatever else you're doing, you're burning more calories because you're carrying a little bit more of what I call metabolic liability in the form of muscle. So sorry that was long-winded, but just hopefully in the spirit of why the question was asked, there's lots out there that you can look into as options, but you want to mix and match them according to what your obviously what your goals are, but how you're going about it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Doc.